Good evening. I feel like, with all due respect to the world governments and people who've lost someone and victims of crime and United States soldiers and citizens, politicians and police, um, I like to say that I feel as though the criminal justice system in the United States of America and in many other places all over the world is creating a system of repetition of convicts and inmates and offenders and people who have nothing. Um, what I'm trying to say is, I feel like the people on death row and in jail and prisons should be released, and I feel like it's cruel to cage another human being and isolate them and detain them against their free will, to literally, physically force another human being to be a slave through prisons, which is actually in the Constitution of the United States of America. I feel like black people specifically were targeted drugs by allegedly the United States of America, which Michael Levine supposedly, well, he said he witnessed himself and he was a DEA agent for the United States of America. And then to turn around and lock us up for those same drugs, you know, um, is another form. Well, it's definitely slavery. Um, the British used opioids, which is like heroin, on the Japanese in like the 1800s in war as a biochemical warfare weapon, which devastated the Japanese people. But I like to say like black people are owed reparations, but not only black people. I feel like a lot of people all over the world, many nations, are owed reparations because in some cases, people's, well, because of war, genocide, starvation, disease, poverty, drugs, um, excuse me, what I'm trying to say is like the North Koreans' entire lives uh like dictated in all ways what they can learn, what they can say, what they can do, what they have to do every day. Um, their jobs, occupations chosen for them, what they eat. Um, in some cases, in a lot of cases, they have to go to war. Some are jailed. Well, in fact, um, North Koreans were jailed for the crime of one of their entire families were jailed for the crime of one of their family members. One of alleged crimes, like speaking out against dictatorship, or supposedly. For the rest of their lives, they were locked up. Some were killed. um, I feel like United States soldiers should be brought home, to deal with domestic and foreign threats, such as global warming, poverty, um, disease, crime, drugs. But I mean, eradicating drugs, like literally using the same effort they used to find Bin Laden to eradicate drugs, and not just punishing and getting tough on crime, because crime is committed by majority poor people who have nothing, and poverty creates crime, and crime is caused by um, systems in place, racism, um, unfair wages, um, there's a lot of reasons. Unfair laws in a lot of countries. I'm not just specifically speaking what's happening in the United States of America. Talk about all over the world, cause like um, I just found out that the Russians killed like 100 million Ukrainian people by starving them to death, and then to consider what Hitler and the Germans did to the Jewish people, which was the Holocaust. Japanese in Hiroshima, were victimized as well. I'm not trying to say who's right and wrong in any of these situations, with all due respect to everyone, Um, I'm just saying that all these events, war, has an effect on people, economies, society, treasuries. Then there's a there's a effect that takes place after these events. You know, um, I feel like um, people for old reparations. A lot of people, Chinese, in some cases, the Russians, because the Russians are forced to do what they do at all times by their government, and on top of that, they have to like it's like slavery. To be honest, to be forced by your government to do what you have to do. They're jailed and killed, and I would like to speak up for the Chinese women who have to have abortions um, for population control and have to be submissive to men, you know, and the Chinese people also, like 10 million, millions of them, are in the Japanese, 10 million, millions of them, they both starved to death. Millions of them starved to death is what I'm saying. Um, with all these events happening, I feel like people deserve, you know, a chance, a rehabilitation, a rejuvenation, um, that same opportunity, those same opportunities that you would want if you were put in their situation. Some people, I feel like we should abolish death row and the death penalty, capital punishment, um, jails, penitentiaries should be released. Well, for everybody, because in one sense, global warming is actually a real threat to the United States of America and the world. So why send a person to death, completely destroy and just waste a human being's life when we could send them to colonize another Earth-like planet, or we could send them to serve for the United States Army. We could, like we used to, give people a chances is what I'm saying. Like I say, I do think though the United States of America, if any country, is owed reparations in itself as well, because we are the victims of war as well. The soldiers. Let me just say, our soldiers should be brought home. I'm not trying to disrespect our politicians or president or anyone, but I'm just saying that we want our soldiers home. That's just how we feel, and that's just in us as Americans. We all feel this way. We should put an end to centuries after centuries after centuries of war. There's a problem there, but I do understand that America is fighting the fight for liberty and democracy all over the world. What's to be said, America helps other countries, and has, done much for the world, you know, and they've never, I don't, well, I'm not, well, what I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying anybody owes America anything, but I'm just saying if anybody should get it, we should. Um, well, that's not what I'm trying to say either. North Koreans, Chinese, Russians, Ukrainians, Africans, Mexicans, Irish, Indian, from people from India, rather. And like I say, I'm just a young man, so I haven't like studied like the entire, you know, history of the entire world. So if I left anybody out, I'm not doing that intentionally on purpose. And I'm not saying that you're not old as well, but I'm definitely saying we, these people I mentioned, are definitely owed reparations and democracy and freedom for all men, convicts or not.